One of the last remaining American boot manufacturers just discontinued their Heritage boot line. So today we're gonna cut one in half to see if we can figure out why Chippewa's Heritage line failed. So first, let's go over the boot information. So the brand is Chippewa. The style is the 6-inch service boot. The color is cordovan. They weigh 1 pound 7 ounces. They originally retailed for $290, but you can find them now on Amazon for like $129. And they're made in the United States with imported parts. And you might notice this sticker on the front of the box here was put on after the boxes were made, because they had to put this back on because according to Stridewise, they were hit with a class action lawsuit in California for sort of maybe implying their boots are completely assembled in America, but since some of their parts are made elsewhere, manufactured elsewhere, they had to put the sticker on top to avoid getting sued. And if you don't know the history of Chippewa, it was founded by 2 German immigrants in 1901 in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And Chippewa Falls was a fast-growing logging community at the time, and the need for good, solid, hardworking footwear was apparent. So similar to a lot of the other American brands, they built their business on logging. And then later in 1984, Justin, they're more like a cowboy boot company, acquired Chippewa, and then Berkshire Hathaway acquired Justin in 2000. And in typical fashion, anytime a smaller boot brand gets acquired by a bigger conglomerate, people start claiming that the quality slowly drops over time to where now we're in what year are we in? 2022, and they've discontinued their Heritage line, which is usually associated with the higher quality materials and higher quality construction techniques. And as far as I can tell, the Heritage line was brought back in the fall or spring of 2013 and was discontinued starting 2 years ago, but really was discontinued last year. And to really make this a fair review, to figure out what the value of this boot is, I thought it was only fair to compare it to a similarly priced boot in the Red Wing Iron Ranger, or more specifically the Blacksmiths, because it doesn't have the toe cap like the Iron Rangers does. And right now the Blacksmiths retail for $319, but at the time when Chippewa was competing against Red Wing, they were sold for $299, so we're gonna go off that price point. The other boot we're gonna compare it to is the Thursday Captain boot, because this is a boot that's more of that $200 price point, retails for $199. So it'll give us a range of $200 to $300 to figure out where this $290 boot falls in the quality spectrum. So now let's go over the information we can gather about this boot before we cut it in half, starting with the leather. So this is a chrome tan leather that's 2.2 millimeters thick, and it's really similar to the look and feel of a Horween Chrome XL, but I don't know for sure if it's Horween because there's not a whole lot of information about this leather on the internet. But as far as I can tell, it's not dyed all the way through like a Chrome XL is. It's a lot more wrinkly and has a lot more loose grain than most Chrome XL does, and it just doesn't have that same like sweet Chrome XL smell. So I'm assuming it's not Horween leather. And if you don't know who Horween is, it's a tannery in Chicago. They're world famous for their cordovan and their Chrome XL, and a lot of people just like the name Horween to be associated with whatever boots they're wearing, and it is some indicator of quality. Usually if it's got the Horween stamp on it, it's not a low quality leather. You can at least depend on it to be pretty decent quality. All that being said, I still think it's a really pretty leather. It's a decent thickness leather. It is just really wrinkly and has this kind of loose grain look to it. I personally don't mind it, but I know a lot of people hate this wrinkly, loose grain look. And then to the liner of this boot, so this is similar to the Red Wings with the cotton canvas liner just in the vamp. And the Chippewa does have a leather counter cover, which is always a plus to me. It's kind of strange because it's not the flesh out counter cover, it's a smooth out, so it doesn't really help with catching your heel, but at least it helps with the wear protection. And then to the construction, so this is a 360 Goodyear welted construction with a real leather welt, very similar to how the Thursdays are built. The Red Wings are built with a 270 and a nailed down heel, which, you know, there's not huge difference in quality between the two, but it's worth noting. And then to the insole of this boot. So we got just a little patch of leather at the heel to cover up where those nails come through to prevent it from snagging on your socks if you ever happen to have one pop up. But the insole itself, or the lasting board, is a fiberboard lasting board. And that's where we're really starting to see the difference between the quality of the Chippewa and the Red Wings, and comparing it closer to the Thursdays. Because the Red Wings has this 4 to 5 millimeter, super thick, dense veg tan leather insole. It's gonna compress to your foot over time to give you that footprint, and it's a lot more durable than fiberboard. And Chippewas being $290, you would assume they would have a leather lasting board, but they're more similar to the Thursdays with that fiberboard. at the $200 price range. And fiberboard's still fine for a certain price point. It's just not quite as durable because the more times you flex it, it's basically just like compressed paper. The more times you flex it, the more it loosens up and the more it's prone to splitting. And next to the midsole, so this midsole looks like it's a little strip of leather, but it's actually a compressed cardboard midsole, which was kind of a bummer because even the Thursdays at $199 has a leather midsole. And interestingly, the Red Wings don't even have a midsole. But I think that's fine because of how thick the insole is, plus all the cork filling. Ideally, I think people would rather have a midsole layer on a Red Wing, but you know, it's not a $500 boot. But being a $290 boot and having a compressed cardboard midsole was kind of disappointing. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of actual natural high quality materials in this boot. I'm really interested to see if it has cork filling like both of these boot or if it's a foam filling or kind of what's on the inside. So we'll see when you get it cut in half. And then to the outsole, so this is a Cork Nitrile Vibram V-Bar outsole. And so at least it is a Vibram outsole. You know, it's not like a self-branded one or a really cheap outsole. And then finally to the fit, feel, and look. So initially wearing these, they're really hard underfoot. And so are Red Wings, but the nice thing about Red Wings is that, like I said, the leather compresses the shape of your foot, making it more comfortable, and all that cork gives you a little bit of extra cushioning. And Thursdays are ridiculously soft underfoot because you have so much foam there that gives you that comfort until it shapes to the shape of your foot, and the Chippewas are just not comfortable. And maybe more importantly, there's really nothing unique or interesting about the design of this boot. It's very similar to every other boot that's built on the Munson style last, just like the Blacksmiths and the Wolverines. It just is that classic heritage style. And where they're not one of the top brands in Wolverine and Red Wing and some of these other brands, there's just nothing about the design of this boot that makes it stand out and makes you want to buy it over one of the more well-known brands. So now let's cut this thing in half to really see what's on the inside and see if it's closer to the Red Wings quality or more similar to the $200 Thursday quality. All right, we got it cut in half. Let's see what's inside. This is where you really start to see the quality difference between the Chippewa and Red Wings, because there's almost no natural materials on the inside of this boot. It's all synthetic materials all the way through the sole construction, just like the $199 Thursdays, except for you don't have the leather midsole. And the filling on the inside, instead of cork, like both of these boots, it's a cheap recycled foam. It looks almost like a carpet foam. But it does have a steel shank, which is nice, but it's topped with a compressed cardboard layer. There's actually a few different layers of compressed cardboard, similar to how Thursdays are done. The counter is a Celastic counter, more similar to the Thursdays, and unlike the Red Wing, which is a leather board counter. It's not real leather, it's reconstituted leather, which in my opinion is better than Celastic counters. So it's pretty clear to me that this is a lot closer to a $200 boot rather than the $290 that they sold it for. And you might be thinking, well, it's made in the United States and you're comparing it to the Thursdays, which are made in Mexico. But as we talked about earlier, it's made from imported parts. It's not fully made in America, and it's really hard to know how much is actually made in the United States. And we've seen this before with boots being made from imported parts in the United States, in like the Carolinas, which are closer to that $200 price point, which I would argue are just as good, if not better, for $50 to $60 cheaper. So really, I don't see any justification of these being worth $290, especially compare them to the other boots. So to me, the reason this boot line failed is They were not built to the same quality of similarly priced boots. They were not fully made in the United States like the other Red Wings. They weren't one of the top brands, and they didn't really do anything to differentiate themselves from the more popular brands that were selling better boots at the same price. And they were bought in the 80s by a bigger conglomerate, and just like we've talked about before, a lot of times those big companies are dropping the quality to increase the margins to make more money, more profit at the expense of a good brand's name just to make a little bit more money. And we reached out to Chippewa to get a comment on why they discontinued the line, and they said it was an executive decision to discontinue the original line because of low sales. So I think all that combined just didn't make this an intriguing boot for most people. It wasn't a high quality boot for the price, and they just didn't sell. So I think that is what killed the Chippewa Heritage line. And let me know what you guys think. If you've owned these boots, what your experience is with them, and if I missed anything in why this boot line failed. But one nice thing is, because they discontinued them, you can find these boots on Amazon and some of the other sites for around $130 to $150, and at that price point, I think they are worth it, because it's pretty nice boot for 150 bucks. So I'll put some links to these last remaining boots in the description, and thank you guys so much for everything you do. And the World War II boot series is starting at some point, hopefully this month. We'll see. It's been a wild month, so thank you guys for all your support. See ya.